Hi there, this is David and welcome to my listing of 10 short but enjoyable strategy RPGs for working adults. My very first strategy RPG was Final Fantasy Tactics, and while I loved it, it's just long. So here instead, I'm going to be looking at other strategy RPGs that are still just as good, but much shorter. Everything here has been vetted by me. I've played, enjoyed, and completed all of them in less than 20 hours. Also, I'm not ranking them. I'll instead be listing them in alphabetical order. So, let's get started. Number 1, Arc the Lad, released for the PlayStation. Back in the day when you bought a game from Working Designs, you knew you were getting quality, and you knew that you were getting a good deal. Not only did their games come with hardcover manuals and trinkets, but many times you'd get multiple games packed all together. In Arc the Lad's case, you got all 3 in one. And although these classics were sold as a trilogy, and all 3 of them are fantastic, only the first one can be completed in under 20 hours. The other 2 will take you more around 60 to do the main quest because of the inclusion of the guild system, allowing for endless exploration and side quests. With battles taking place on a grid-based system, it is similar to Final Fantasy Tactics, only your characters already have predefined roles. If you like what you see in the first game, and you want to move on to the much longer sequels afterwards, rejoice, because they all take place within the same world, and characters from the previous games will join up and make cameos all throughout. Number 2, Bahamut Lagoon, released for the SNES. Whereas nowadays Square just seems to be a Final Fantasy milking machine, back in the day they were no stranger to experimentation, coming up with some pretty cool games, most of which we didn't receive in the West though. And this is one of those lost gems. Following the adventures of Captain Bayou and his squad of dragons as he flies between the floating continents, or lagoons, to repel the invasion of the Grand Belos Empire, the graphics are absolutely gorgeous, easily some of the best on the system, and interestingly enough, environmental effects are taken into account. For example, you could have a dragon use ice breath on a river to turn it into ice, or fire breath to burn down some trees. It's a unique mechanic that I wish more games utilized. Pick this one up if you haven't heard of it, you won't regret it. Number 3, Growlancer Generations, released for the PlayStation 2. Like Arc the Lad, the long-running Growlancer series was picked up and localized by Working Designs, and in true fashion, when you bought the game, you actually got 2. Growlancer Generations is a bundle pack of the second and third games in the series, and as the shortest games in the franchise, they both can be completed in under 20 hours. For those of you who have never heard of the series, it utilizes real-time strategy, and many times the conditions for winning aren't just killing all the enemies. The ring weapons and gem slots allow for tons of customization and strategy. Also central to the plot is the dating mechanic, where your love interest changes upon your choices, and you can get a different ending depending on which girl you choose to romance. Number 4, Just Breed, released for the NES. I wish this game was actually released here back in the day. I would have had so much fun with it. Released by Enix of Dragon Quest fame, this was their answer to Sega's Shining Force series. This is one of my favorites, and it's the only game on this list that I've Let's Played on my channel. It's unique insofar as the sheer number of units that you control in battles. For an NES game, the maps are huge, much larger than the traditional Final Fantasy Tactics maps, and because of that, your army is enormous too. Not only do you control the commanders, but you also control their 5 underlings. By the end of the game, you'll have about 30 troops on the map, and you may think that this makes the battles overwhelming, but it really doesn't. It's a whole lot of fun. However, since you and the enemies have so many troops, I would recommend that you enjoy it through emulation and fast forwarding. Number 5, Monstania, released for the SNES. This is easily the shortest of the bunch on here, lasting only about 3 hours. It's also probably one of the strangest, because it's a mixture of strategy RPG and a roguelike. Each time you move about the screen or take an action, the enemies will also take an action. It's an interesting mix, but it really does work. And unlike most strategy RPGs where you control multiple units, here you're either alone or just with one other partner. Monstania tells a short, tight story with pretty much no padding whatsoever. And just because it's short doesn't mean that it's not strategic. Because you're so limited and the game throws so many battles and puzzles at you, it's probably more strategic than many other games on the list. If you're interested at all, be sure to check it out. You can easily finish it in just one sitting. Number 6. Ogre Battle, March of the Black Queen, released for the SNES. I remember when this first came out, and to say that it was rare is the understatement of the year. Breath of Fire 2, Robotrek, and Suikoden 2 were all rare as well, and I was actually able to find a copy of those, but this one? Nope. I was never actually able to find a copy of this game despite looking for it for years. Luckily though, I did find the strategy guide for it, and I just about devoured that because it was the next best thing to actually playing the game. It was only much later on through emulation that I was actually finally able to play it. Similarly to Growlancer, this is a real-time strategy RPG, but it's also notoriously difficult. However, I still had a lot of fun with it, finding all the secrets strewn about the map. It's a quick one too. You can finish the main campaign in roughly 15 hours. Number 7. Rhapsody, a musical adventure, released for the PlayStation and then later bastardized for the Nintendo DS. You know how many RPGs are focused upon political intrigue, world domination, and slaying demon lords? Well, not this one. It might as well be titled Rhapsody, a girls and gays adventure. This is not your typical game. Not only does the story unfold in the style of a musical, it's just complete nonsense from beginning to end. I mean, Disgaea takes their story more seriously than this one does. It follows Porinette and her army of puppets as she fights to rescue her crush from a witch and a crazy machine gun-toting rival. This is one of the shortest strategy RPGs ever made, lasting only about 8 hours, but damn if it isn't fun, cute, and unique. I love games that don't take themselves too seriously. Number 8. Shining Force, released for the Sega Genesis and then later remade on the Game Boy Advance. When I was a kid, I only owned Nintendo consoles up until the release of the PlayStation. And because of this, I still think that I'm rather biased against Sega. I just don't have a lot of experience with their games, seeing as I couldn't play them and they obviously weren't covered in my subscription to Nintendo Power. However, I do remember reading the back of the boxes for the Shining Force and Phantasy Star games, and wishing that I could play them. But like many other games on this list, I couldn't actually access them until the godsend of emulation arrived. Something interesting to note about the series is that they're all not just strategy games. Each one is different, from dungeon crawling to tower defense to even traditional turn-based RPGs. The series spans all sorts of genres in a way that most other franchises do not. Number 9. Tactics Ogre, Knight of the Lotus, released for the Game Boy Advance. If you're like me, and you're a fan of Final Fantasy Tactics, you owe it to yourself to see where it all started, because it's a pretty well-kept secret that Final Fantasy Tactics is pretty much just a complete rip-off of Tactics Ogre Let Us Clean Together for the SNES and PlayStation. Both utilize an isometric viewpoint, job classes, grid-based combat, and a politically intriguing storyline. But while that game is long, lasting roughly 50 hours, the portable outing is much more manageable. If you like what you see here, or are just a fan of other games in the series, be sure to check it out. Not only does it offer replayability and the choices that you make throughout the game, but it also has 5 different endings. Number 10. Treasure Hunter G, released for the SNES. It's rare that I play games twice, especially games that I didn't have access to in my childhood. But this one bucks the trend. It's just so cute and well done. Coming out very late in the SNES's life, this is one of the best looking games on the system, starring Red and Blue of Saga Frontier fame, as they cross the world looking for their long-lost father and subsequently putting a stop to the Dark King's ambitions. Unlike most strategy RPGs, here you only control 4 party members, who explore towns and dungeons just as you would in a traditional game. But upon encountering monsters, you fight it out in small-scale tactical battles. All 4 of your guys fight differently though, from Red being your melee, to Blue setting tracks and jumping around the field, to Rain healing you up, and little Ponga, your awesome black mage. Well, That's it for 10 short but enjoyable strategy RPGs for working adults. I hope that you liked this video, and what are some short games that you would recommend to others? Also, be on the lookout for the next part where I'll go over even more short RPGs of varying genres. If you like this video and what I do here on the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. The link to it can be found in the video description. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.